this is hands down the most profitable car dealership in the world. Every car they sell nets them double the original price. Here's their scheme. While the customer's signing the paperwork, they discreetly plant a tracker in a hidden spot on the car. Once the customer drives away, they simply follow the tracker, locate the car, and use a spare key to reclaim it. They bring the car to a secret warehouse where they swap out the VIN, reset the onboard system, and give the car a fresh coat of paint. Then it's off to the port, shipped overseas, and sold a second time. Pure profit, no risk. This operation has always been flawless, filling their pockets to the brim. But this time, Lady Luck decided to sit this one out. When they went to retrieve the tracker, a man suddenly popped out of the trunk. Without a word, he handled some personal business, then calmly made a call and handed them a pair of shiny silver bracelets. Yup, the man in the trunk was an undercover cop. The car thieves, though, weren't planning on going down easy. They hadn't stopped to think why a lone officer would dare walk into their den. Turned out, this guy probably watched way too many Jackie Chan movies. The thieves were no match, even with their numbers. By the time backup arrived, they were reduced to weak complaints about police brutality. Then came the jaw-dropping finale. The cop took out a lighter, removed the cover, and slashed his forehead with it. Wrapping a steel pipe in his shirt, he handed it to the gang leader, who stared in total confusion.
예, 그 지금을 일단 내려놔 빨리. 정당방위다.
Detective Seo Do-chul may be tough and shrewd on the job, but his relentless honesty comes at a cost. Over 40 and barely making ends meet, Seo lives with his family in a shabby apartment he can barely afford, relying on loans just to pay the rent. This financial strain is a constant source of friction at home, and every encounter with the wealthy leaves him feeling inadequate. Yet fate has a way of putting us face to face with exactly what we'd rather avoid. Recently, through a friend's introduction, Seo Do-chul provided action coaching to a famous actress preparing for a police role. The video received widespread praise upon release, prompting the chaebol family's influential son backing the actress to invite Seo to dinner as a gesture of thanks. But little did he know that this dinner would become the catalyst, sparking Seo Do-chul, a mere district detective, to take on Korea's untouchable corporate elite. As Seo Do-chul stepped into the private room, it was clear he wasn't on the guest list for his own merit. Jo Tae-oh gave him a brief nod, and everyone quickly returned to their own entertainment, barely noticing he was even there. Seeing the scene before him, Seo Do-chul, who already disliked dealing with the wealthy, felt even more out of place. Awkwardly, he tried to make small talk with the chaebol heir, grasping for any conversation to fill the tension.
재벌하고 술을 다 마셔보고.
But to his surprise, a casual, offhand remark led him to witness something that left him completely stunned. Things took a disturbing turn when Jo Tae-oh shoved ice down a female companion's neckline, showing blatant disrespect even toward the actress in a display of utter disregard. It dawned on Seo that the charm of these elites was only a front for the public. They saw everyone as toys for their amusement.
재벌이 이렇게밖에 못 놉니다. 용서해 주십시오.
Seo Do-chul's instincts as a cop told him that the arrogance Jo Tae-oh had shown so far was likely just the tip of the iceberg. Just days later, his friend Chauffeur Bae, an employee in Jo Tae-oh's family company, accidentally fell down the stairs at their headquarters and landed in critical condition. Initially, Seo suspected nothing until he saw the guilty, cryptic message Bae had texted his wife just before the incident. Bae's young son then mentioned something chilling, leading Seo to suspect foul play. The truth began to unravel.
잘못한 것도 없는데 왜 맞아요?
Chauffeur Bae's transportation company had been withholding his wages for months. Finally, fed up, he took his young son to the corporate headquarters and held up a protest banner, demanding his pay. By a twist of fate, Jo Tae-oh, an ignored, illegitimate son desperate to prove himself, saw the protest. Seizing the chance to make an impression, he took it upon himself to handle the matter. But when Jo realized the unpaid amount was only a mere 4.2 million won, he felt humiliated by the trivial sum. Jo Tae-oh, always prone to extremes, was furious that the amount was so small. Not only was it too trivial to earn him any credit, but his siblings would likely laugh him out of the room if they heard about it. Angry and embarrassed, he ordered Bae's supervisor to physically assault him before handing over his own paycheck. Jo even restrained Bae's son, forcing the boy to watch his father's degradation. This unbearable humiliation broke Bae. After putting his son in a taxi, tragedy struck. Seo Do-chul suspected the truth was darker than it seemed. From knowing Bae personally, Seo knew he was a cheerful, family-oriented man who wouldn't abandon his loved ones over hardship. When Seo Do-chul first went to the police station handling chauffeur Bae's case, he was unexpectedly and suspiciously turned away by his colleagues. Despite Jo Tae-oh being in his office, Seo faced constant resistance from Jo's assistant, Choi Sang-moo, who invented excuses to prevent Seo from meeting Jo just to catch up. Later that night, when Seo visited the hospital to check on Bae, he noticed something off. The same chaebol group that had refused to pay Bae's family any compensation had suddenly sent Choi Sang-moo to the hospital, showering Bae's wife with warm words and a hefty envelope of condolence money. To his surprise, Seo Do-chul saw the officer in charge of chauffeur Bae's case at the hospital, someone who should have been off duty by now. Seo couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a tragic accident, it was likely a cover-up of a murder. However, Seo underestimated the powerful connections behind the chaebol. They'd already erased the surveillance footage and bribed the police handling the case to close it as a suicide, but they hadn't expected Seo Do-chul to step in, determined to uncover the truth. Since Seo Do-chul was willing to get involved, Jo Tae-oh decided it was time to test just how far Seo's limits would stretch.
어떻게 된 게 이 나라는 기업해서 돈 버는 사람들은 죄다 죄인 취급이야. 우리가 내는 세금으로 나라 굴리는 거 아니야.
Jo targeted Seo's perceived weak spot, his family. Choi Sang-moo later presented Seo's wife with an irresistible designer handbag filled with cash, enough to buy a home in a prime school district. But Seo's wife, unfazed, called out the gift as counterfeit, dumping out the cash without a second thought. This only made Choi realize that attempting to leverage Seo's family against him would backfire. It would only strengthen Seo's resolve to dig deeper. In Korea, there's nothing a chaebol can't accomplish when they set their mind to it. Jo Tae-oh pressured the National Police Commissioner, who ordered Seo Do-chul's chief to warn him, if Seo kept pushing for the truth, he'd be out of a job. But instead of deterring Seo, this only drove him to confront Jo head-on.
야, 조태호. 폭행사주 처벌 얼마 안 해. 그냥 제대로 사과하고 피해자 가족들 책임져주고 끝내라. 나 이런 병신 새끼들.
At a high-profile event, Seo publicly humiliated Jo without holding back, giving no respect to the powerful heir. This caused Jo's father to view him as even more of a disgrace, and even Jo's assistant, Choi Sang-moo, bore the brunt of the chairman's anger over the incident. Blinded by rage, Jo ignored his father's advice to avoid Seo and ordered a senior inspector to launch an investigation into Seo for excessive force, hoping to intimidate him. But Seo showed no fear. As an honest, hard-working cop who struggled to make ends meet, Seo was disappointed to find that seeking justice would only bring him pressure from all sides. This disappointment only strengthened his resolve. He was determined to reveal the truth, even if it meant losing his badge. Through relentless investigation, Seo finally tracked down chauffeur Bae's immediate supervisor, who had gone into hiding. Together with like-minded colleagues, Seo apprehended the supervisor, uncovering large amounts of cash, a passport, and a plane ticket, clear evidence that Jo was trying to buy silence and destroy any trace of evidence. Bae's wife also shared an unusual detail. Bae typically sent her brief texts, but on the day of his incident, he'd send an unusually long, complicated message, using words far beyond his usual vocabulary. Additionally, emergency call records showed that although the police recorded the call about Bae's incident at 11:39, someone had dialed emergency services at 11:22 but immediately hung up. Just as Seo Do-chul's meticulous investigation was about to uncover the truth, Choi Sang-moo's sudden confession blindsided him.
그냥 미안합니다 한마디만 하면 될 일이 어떻게 이렇게까지 커질 수가 있지? 사회적으로 욕먹고 사는 거 당신네들 익숙하잖아. 근데 왜 이렇게 일을 벌려가면서 막는 거야?
It was obvious Choi was feeling the heat from Seo's relentless questioning, but given his family's history of servitude to the powerful chaebol, Choi had been groomed to bite whenever his masters demanded it. This time, however, the notoriously harsh chairman took an unexpected turn. He not only showed concern for Choi Yong-yuan but also offered him a rare opportunity. All Choi had to do was take the fall for Jo Tae-oh. And when things blew over, the chairman promised him a coveted CEO position. Driven by desperation and ambition, Choi agreed to the gamble. Yet even behind bars, he couldn't escape Soo Jima's relentless investigation. To Choi's shock, Soo had pieced together the events of chauffeur Bae's ordeal using only the evidence at hand. That fateful day, after a humiliating encounter, chauffeur Bae had returned to confront Jo Tae-oh in his office, but his bare fists were no match for Tae-oh's trained bodyguards. Amid another brutal beating, Bae's head slammed against a glass coffee table. When panic struck the room, one henchman even suggested calling the police, but Choi intervened, steering them towards a more sinister plan. After sending a text to Bae's wife to set the scene, they heartlessly threw Bae down the stairwell, making his death look self-inflicted. Though Choi was rattled by Seo's near-perfect deduction of events, he forced himself to keep his cool, feigning composure as best as he could. When Seo Do-chul brought in a witness, a former employee fired for attempting to call the police on the night of the incident, Choi Sang-moo finally grasped the true tenacity of this detective. Though he tried to taunt Seo to throw him off, Choi subtly dropped hints, desperate to leave himself a sliver of escape. Seo picked up on it right away. A seasoned cop like him knew that the best way to break down suspects was to let them reveal their own cracks. Thus began the trap for Jo Tae-oh. Seo knew that a spoiled heir like Jo would spend his last night in Korea indulging in every excess. They only had to wait for him to enter his private club, inject himself with whatever substance he fancied, and then report a murder inside to ensure police backup would arrive. What they hadn't anticipated was that Jo Tae-oh would actually go as far as committing murder. The victim was a young starlet he'd already discarded. She had been carrying his child, naively hoping it would force him to marry her. Instead, she ended up overdosed far beyond what any human could withstand. By the time police arrived, she was barely clinging to life. Realizing he was in deep, Jo panicked. He knew that if he didn't make a run for it, he'd be facing far more than just prison, so he barreled through, ignoring the police, and drove straight into the crowded pedestrian street. Fortunately, Seo Do-chul acted swiftly and forced him to a stop. Just as Seo Do-chul was about to take him down, he noticed bystanders nearby filming with their phones. Seo, tired of accusations of excessive force, decided to take a punch, letting Jo knock him to the ground. Just as Jo believed he had escaped, a burly civilian stepped out,
동네 난리 쳐놓고 어딜 가?
blocking his path. While Seo took the moment to recover, the reality closed in on Jo. Even with his boxing training, there was no escape. Jo Tae-oh's fate was sealed not only by the law but by the unstoppable determination of an everyday cop who had dared to bring down a powerful chaebol heir.